Well, thanks Addison Bevere and Cheryl Nemhard for your encouraging thoughts on love. And to continue our discussion on love and Jesus' love coming to the world, I am thrilled to chat with two incredible women. Lisa Pak, a See Here Love co-host, an ordained minister with 14 years of pastoral ministry and church experience in South Korea, Singapore, and Canada, with a particular focus amongst the Korean diaspora community, and the Director of Global Engagement with Finishing the Task. Welcome, Lisa. So great to see you.
It's good to see you.
Thanks for being with us. And Joyce Rees, pastor at Epic Vineyard in Calgary, Alberta, a conference and retreat speaker and the co-host of the theological podcast Down to Earth, and who has been working in vocational ministry for almost 30 years in various pastoral capacities. So welcome, Joyce and Lisa, to the show.
Thanks very much.
Yes, thanks for having us.
Well, today it is about love. We are ending our Advent journey. We have talked about hope, peace, joy, and now it is about love. We've lit the Christ candle. We have lit the love candle, Christ has come. What is the significance of this moment for the world? What is the significance for you of love coming to the world? Joyce, let's start with you.
Well, for me, when I think about this question, Melinda, I think it's God with us, not at a distance, relatable. Jesus entered right in. I love the Eugene Peterson translation of John 1. God moved into the neighborhood. I'm sure lots of people have read that in the Message. That's just so amazing. And I wish people knew more what it means, what it reveals about God, that he came the way he did, crying and hungry and needy and vulnerable and a million other very human things, that he's gone from the world, even bearing scars on his resurrected and perfected body, like perpetually identifying as one of us. I don't feel like I can just talk about Christmas and Jesus and love and not point to the whole arc of the story. And the idea that Advent says, yes, he's come and we're longing for his second coming. So God made flesh in and of itself is maybe one of the most astonishing mysteries, and a love of such magnitude that when we really take it in, we're compelled to worship, to give thanks, to offer our lives in return. And I think that's what we're celebrating. That's at least what strikes me.
Yeah, I love that. And again, I love that. Yeah, God moved into the neighborhood, moved in to be with us. And that is great love. Great love. Thank you, Joyce. Lisa, for you, the significance of this moment in history.
I think it's Christmas, obviously, this year is going to be very different. It is very different for everybody. Even leading up to it, it was very different. I think it's two different things for the believing world and then the unbelieving world. For the believing world, it's exactly what Joyce shared about how it's celebrating the promise that Jesus was coming, and now we're on the tail end of that, and we're looking forward to the second coming. And in this season that has been so difficult for so many, for me, it's just the reminder that God is with us, but also that he will continue to be with us. And it's this strength to hope. Because I think you need a lot of strength to hope when everything around you is such a pressure cooker, and it's the resilience to wait. I think for the unbelieving world, it's an invitation to think beyond the now and to say there is life thereafter, there is life eternal, and it's an invitation to hope in the eternal in a way that they've probably never done before if they don't know Jesus Christ. So there is something magical and supernatural about the season, and I think it's because we celebrate when God moved into the neighborhood.
Yeah, I love that. Moving to a personal experience, knowing Jesus and what he has done for you, being in relationship with him, how has that then informed how you love yourself, your neighbor, and God? Big question, I know, Joyce and Lisa, but I think it's important for people to realize you don't just make the decision and you're like, I'm in, and then I don't do anything, and it doesn't change the way that I live or make a difference in the world. So from a personal experience, how has love coming to the world, Jesus coming into the neighborhood, changed you and informed how you are with others?
It's a huge question.
I know, yes.
Do you want to speak to it first, Lisa?
Well, I was just thinking, like, you hinted at it when you were sharing about Advent too, when it's like, you can't just have Christmas alone. It leads to the cross, right? And John 3:16 is one of those Bible verses that even many in the secular world also have heard, for God so loved the world. And that always catches me, because I find that as we celebrate this season, we're celebrating love, and it's not just receiving love. It's like you're challenged to give, and the boundaries of my heart, I can feel it stretching in certain situations with certain people in certain contexts. And you're just like, is this the limit of my love? And then when you understand that God so loved the world that he moved in, he sent his son, that whosoever believes in him shall not perish but have eternal life. That just like pushes the boundaries a little bit. And that for me also connects with 1 John 4, where it says there is no fear in love. And a lot of the issues that we deal with, whether it's mental health, social justice, there's a lot of fear undergirding a lot of those issues. And when we talk about this perfect love, there's no fear. And then you're like, okay, so what am I afraid of? What is preventing me from loving the people around me in the way that God first loved me? And that always gets me, because I realize you aren't as loving as you might think you are, right? I realize that about myself. And you're like, okay, so let's go back to 101. How has God loved me? And you just feel all the limits of your heart just being stretched.
I love that. It's like expanding and stretching your heart to love and bring, people in. That's beautiful. Thanks, Lisa. Joyce.
Yeah, for me, I mean, you know me well enough, Melinda, just that it always comes down to God's reach, the way the story of Jesus unfolded tells us an awful lot about God's arc in history and our participation. So, I just think it has everything to do with justice. Jesus came in love as the humble king, born in a barn, born into poverty. Lots of people would realize when his parents brought doves as their offering on the 8th day when he was named, that's because they were poor. If you back up into the Levitical law, that's the offering of the poor. And he was forced to flee as a refugee to a foreign country when he was a toddler. That tells us an awful lot about God's heart. He could have been born into security and wealth and pomp and circumstance, but he came in a really upside down way as the king of all. So I think even the fact that it was the shepherds who first heard the unclean, people whose vocation made them perpetually unclean according to Jewish law, they were the first people to receive the good news that the Savior had been born. So for me, what love looks like has to align with the priorities of the heart of God as it's revealed in that very first Advent, when God, love, came to be with us. So the poor and the marginalized were the very center of that story. And so for me, it has to be the same way. If we're to love like Christ, we have to bring good news in humble ways to the most marginalized in our communities. And if we come looking to be served or to love, to be loved instead of to give love, we miss the way of Jesus. We give it away and then we're filled over and over again 1,000 times. And I love what Lisa said, like the love of God is the model. He so loved the world. We're compelled. And I feel that when I read the Christmas story, it just reminds me again, who am I reaching to? How am I embodying this for the least in my own community? And it's upside down enough that it makes me remember what Christmas is about. The Christian Christmas, not just the cultural Christmas. And of course, we have both things in my family, lots of gifts and feasting and joy and all of that. But I don't want to lose that part of the story. Does that make sense?
It absolutely makes sense. Lisa and Joyce, I'll start with you, Lisa. This is a season where, yes, it's going to look very different than most Christmas seasons as far as parties and getting together. It's also a hard season for many people. This year has been hard for many people. So this Christmas isn't going to be any easier. And so for those that are struggling, those that are sad, those that are longing for love and have never found it or been hurt by love of people who are scared of love, what would you say to encourage them today, this Christmas week, about God's love for them? How would you encourage them today? Lisa?
First, I would say acknowledge everybody is created to love and be loved. I mean, that we are created in God's image. So this longing, this desire to love and be loved, it's natural. It's in your spiritual DNA. And for anybody to tell you otherwise is wrong. And as we get into this season and there's a desire to get reconnected, I think I would also encourage people to hold plans and circumstances loosely. I mean, this too shall pass. It's the people, it's the relationships. So hold your circumstances, your plans, your perfect Christmas party, hold those loosely, hold people tightly. Hold people tightly, make time for the people, allow people to serve you. If you're in a position where you want to be loved, sometimes you have to stretch your heart to be in a place where you're allowing people to love you, because that's hard for some people. And that's fear there if you've been hurt in the past. Be patient with yourself, pace yourself throughout the day, do what matters. Do what lasts, do things that, I don't want to make it sound like a self-help book, but in this season, you have to do things that make you feel joy, and not just a surface level joy. Everyone loves retail therapy until you see the bill. It's like those deep-seated moments where you're like, this is meaningful. And I think I also want to remind people that everyone only has 24 hours in a day. You have to choose how you will spend them or who you will spend them with. And I think that's what makes this season so meaningful. I mean, Joyce just pointed out, Jesus came as, in the lowest of income, ever. And he was in that impoverished state, and yet there was so much joy there. So
I love it. So it's people. I love that, Lisa, where you said, hold your plans, your parties and circumstances loosely, but hold your people tightly. That's wonderful. Thank you for that. That's great encouragement for us today. And Joyce, your encouragement for those that are struggling this Christmas.
Yeah, I've been a pastor long enough to know that lots of us call this suicide season. Which sounds terrible to even bring up on television Christmas week. But I think it's important to acknowledge Christmas brings up trauma and histories and disappointments and just hard stuff. And then you add the pandemic in and all the roller coaster of 2020. And I imagine this question is very important that you're asking, Melinda. So I really agree with what Lisa said. And the other thing I would add is Christmas is relational in nature. It's God coming to be with us. And even though we might not be able to be with the people that we want to be with this Christmas in the way we want to be together, if we can keep the idea that this is meant to be relational, any relational reach is going to have the ability to experience love. So that could be an act of kindness. I don't know if you get a lot of snow like we do in Calgary, but it could just be go shovel somebody's front walkway or their driveway. Demonstrate love. Don't just look to get, but to give. Maybe it's picking up the phone, old school style, or sending a little note to someone because they just keep crossing your mind. That's gift giving. Maybe it's you can't share food, but you can just Zoom with someone or FaceTime and both be eating something similar together, or raise a glass and just have a moment together. Whatever way you can reach. Sometimes what we do is we shut down and think, well, no one's thinking of me, or no one's reaching out to me, or no one's recognizing this is a hard time for me. And I don't know, Jesus's way is to lose your life, be the least, then you're the greatest, you're last, you're first, you're poor, you're rich, right? It's so upside down. So if in just very small ways, not grandiose ways, but very small ways, we can say, I'm going to be upside down right now. Instead of looking for me, I'm going to look to give. Instead of thinking about what words I need of love or encouragement, I'm going to give them. Maybe even be old school and write a card. I actually think in some mysterious way, this is the heart of God, and it actually adds life to us when we give our lives away. It's upside down, but it's the way of Jesus. So that would be my encouragement pastorally, is it's hard, acknowledge that it's hard, and then find ways to just embody the love of Christ as best as you are able and ask Jesus to help you.
Lisa Pak, Joyce Rees, thank you so much for being with us today. So many good nuggets of wisdom. Merry Christmas to you and to your family.
Merry Christmas.
So glad that you could celebrate Christmas with me here on See Hear Love. And I am just so thankful for the good pastoral work, your presence in the lives of congregations and neighborhoods and in the places that you influence. So thank you so much for being with me today.
It's a gift.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. Thanks.